Some 17 months ago, I delivered a sermon titled Wilderness Living. And afterwards, some of you told me that you thought that I was going to share an experience of hiking or camping or living in the wild. And I appreciate that you thought me capable of such feats. But look at me, I don't go anywhere that I can't plug in my blow dryer, and even with it, it looks like this. So, yeah, not an outdoorsy kind of gal. But what I did preach was a metaphor of living in the wilderness. The wilderness can be an existential place where we might find ourselves disoriented and wandering because we just got smacked with some big change in our lives. Change that comes unbidden, compliments of a disinterested universe that doesn't care that we were doing just fine as things were. It can be personal, such as when someone we love dies, or we lose our job, suffer a serious illness, or maybe have a bad car accident. These things are sudden, serious, and disorienting, and it takes time to get our feet underneath us again. While we can find our way out of the wilderness, many of us know from experience that we will not be the same when we emerge. Change is by necessity transformative. And if we are not transformed by our wilderness living, we either haven't found our way out yet or maybe haven't survived it. Change can affect organizations as well as individuals. And when big unforeseen change comes to institutions, the corporate body, the whole, experiences the same disorientation. And organizations, groups of people, institutions can spend time living in the metaphorical wilderness too. And the way out is the same, by being transformed. My wilderness living sermon included the timeless Exodus story in the Hebrew scriptures, which exemplifies a people enduring a lengthy wandering in the Sinai desert. Their wilderness journey allowed them to be transformed from a people of bondage in Egypt to a free people settled in a promising new land. It took the Israelites 40 years to make that transformation. It was a long, arduous journey. The people were afraid, uncomfortable, and, as I said, disoriented. They complained. They longed for the comfort of the familiar, the predictable. And sometimes when I think about having my own discomfort, especially while traveling, I think with tongue in cheek of the folks that might have said, the promised land, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? All the while, Moses, their leader, was helping his people build a timeless religious institution, creating a movable temple that they could take, that could be carried into and settled in the promised land. A tremendous amount of energy and time was spent building a new way, physically, theologically, and spiritually. Yet, the new way would lead them to the promised land only if the people owned it. The Exodus story contains many parallels for today's practice of interim ministry, a ministry that we share, you as the congregation, me as the minister. And when we embarked on our wilderness journey together 17 months ago, I used that story to help us understand the journey ahead. My task has been to lead you from Reverend Harris's retirement to the shores of a new ministry and new era for the fellowship. In the last 2 years, we have engaged in specific tasks intended to prepare you for a new way of being. Unlike the Israelites, we don't have 40 years to transition. Your learning, your growth, your readiness for the next chapter must be gained in a much shorter span of time. Therefore, the interim ministry program is designed to concentrate and expedite your readiness. And that comes with certain tasks to be completed by me and by you. Those tasks were determined early on in the interim process, and all have been undertaken, and some of them have been completed. And much work remains. The fact is that we're somewhat like the ancient Israelites. We're a people of an institution experiencing big change. And so, of course, at first, we're prone to confusion. We tend to be irritable. We might not be as highly productive when we're in this wandering state. So the work at hand has been achieved in fits and starts. We also found ourselves quite distracted by a much larger institutional change at the Unitarian Universalist Association level. It was a bylaw change that was really difficult to take in our stride in a time when we're in the midst of our own trying to figure stuff out, right? And though the tasks of the interim ministry remain incomplete, they are in reality ongoing in the life of the congregation. Really, nothing in a congregation, I'll at least extend it to our Unitarian Universalist congregations that are independent, operate independently. There's always change afoot. And so nothing is written in stone, so to speak. And so many of those tasks will be revisited again and again and again. What's more important is your ownership as a congregation of a common vision for the next chapter in the life of this fellowship. When Reverend Harris retired, she handed you the keys to the kingdom. But as she did, she reminded you that those keys were always yours, not hers. While ministers are important companions on a congregation's journey, ministers come and go. And as I've said to you before in this pulpit, you always have been and always will be the ones you wait for. So seize the day and the keys. Own them. In the Exodus story, only those who owned the new narrative of being a free and settled people, a people transformed, crossed the River Jordan into the Promised Land. At this point, let's stop for a minute and step back and ask ourselves, are we there yet? Have we arrived at the shores of the River Jordan? In other words, are you, the congregation, ready to enter a new chapter in the life of this fellowship, fully transformed? Well, I think if we're honest with ourselves, and I am getting this feedback from you, no, you're not quite ready. However, trust me, I wouldn't be leaving you if I didn't think that you could do this. You can do this. The Board of Trustees, with the help of lay leaders who stepped up to take on some of the more urgent tasks at hand, have proven their ownership and vision of the fellowship transformed. And there's room for many more folks in the fellowship to be involved in moving UUFBR forward. And it may be as simple as just being part of that common vision. Or it may be something simple, a limited task. Or it could be something big, as folks in the congregation have stepped up to do. So, as essential for all members and friends of this congregation to be ready to be transformed to ownership and responsibility for the fellowship's good functioning, I put two essential questions before you this morning. And I'll ask for a slide change here. How have you individually or the fellowship, have you been transformed in any way, or do you see any kind of transformation or change in the congregation? It might be something small that means something big. It might be something big that means something big. The next question is, what are you willing to commit to or own in terms of creating a new chapter in the life of this fellowship? So I had asked similar questions in an email to members and friends of the congregation, and a few of you responded. And I have highlights, but as you might suspect, I'm going to be asking you this, putting this question to you and asking you to respond this morning. But let's hear what some folks have said. I felt needed to help build a new congregation, one member said. As these 2 years have evolved, I've felt a stronger commitment to the congregation and to the people I have gotten to know. The same person said that they hope the congregation, its interconnectedness and love, will continue even in the changed form and circumstances of the congregation. Another said there's so much potential in our membership, so many talented and loving hearts. And that person also said, I've become even more clear that Unitarian Universalism is all about connection to others and beyond our congregation to the larger world. And this person feels best about being a UU when they are actively engaged in positive action and living out the mantra, deeds, not creeds. Another says that they enjoy a bit of restructure in the service and like that we go out on joys. Another says that being focused on UU history and understanding was welcome from the pulpit. And also where we had guest speakers knowledgeable about other religions and beliefs. Getting a music director recruited. That's a big thing that means a lot going forward, for sure. And then also getting involved in the hiring process for Marina, the music director, was also made, it's work, but it also creates connection between congregants. And finally, another says that they appreciated the in-person pastoral care provided by the minister. They personally felt comforted and included. But also, they thought that many beneficial seeds were planted in the past 2 years, but worry that they will be nourished enough to sprout and grow. So this final observation about seeds sown but needing attention is poignant, and it speaks for the need for many hands, time, talent, to own, nourish, and grow so that transformation is complete. It's not as onerous as it sounds, especially when the load or the tasks are shared. And one of the things that has been created, I think, already is the beginnings of collaboration across functions like worship and membership and other activities that go on in the congregation through the program planning team. And the more collaboration there is, the easier the work becomes and the better connected you become with one another. You will more often be reminded of why you're doing what you're doing. Remembering that the ends, remember means and ends? The ends, the purpose of being here stays in front of or prevents the means from becoming overly important. You will not lose sight of your ends in this way. So to help you own and envision this new chapter in the fellowship, I would like to take 5 minutes now. The ushers have baskets with forms with these 2 questions on them. I would appreciate it if you would take 5 minutes and respond in words, bullets, phrases. You don't have to write complete sentences. Just whatever comes up, bubbles up for you is fine. There's no right or wrong answers. And if you're on Zoom, write your answers in the chat. You don't have to identify yourself if you want to be anonymous. On Zoom, send it directly to Lewis Merlin, the Zoom chaplain. Not going to read any responses now in the sanctuary, but please, during the Share the Plate collection, put your completed sheet in that basket. If you haven't completed it, then hang on to it and you can turn it into the office after the service. It's important that I get your responses today because they're going to be incorporated. I'm going to transcribe them and incorporate them into a ceremony next Sunday, in which I am going to symbolically hand the congregation back to you. So I want everyone to understand everyone's commitment. This is about what you're willing to envision, your willingness to be transformed, and your willingness to own this congregation going forward. So let's take a few minutes. Remember that you will put your sheet in the collection basket when you're done. So just hold on to it for the moment. Robert, we're going to take them back in the basket, the collection basket. Okay, so you don't have to wait for them. Marina has been playing the melody to We Are Dancing Sarah's Circle, and that is our closing hymn. And when we get there, I hope you will take heed for the verses. Here we seek and find our history. We will all do our own naming. Every round, a generation, on and on, the circles moving. You are part of Sarah's circle. Things are not, in life, are not linear. For me, they go in circles, and we make a little bit of progress with every generation. We are just part of a larger history within our congregation. But let us do what we can with what we have in the here and now. May it be so.